Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus.
Hey everyone, welcome back to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Aubrey Coleman, one of the hosts for the podcast, and today we're looking at 2 Kings chapters 16 through 18. King Ahaz was named king of Judah. He ruled in Jerusalem for 16 years and was evil in the sight of the Lord. He was into pagan worship and the sacrificing of children, and for this God opposed him. He died and was succeeded by his son, Hezekiah. Now, chapter 17 brings us to the last king of Israel and Samaria, King Hoshea. While he was king, he was invaded by Assyria many times. 3 years after the invasion, Samaria was taken over, and the people were sent into captivity in Assyria. This was the fall of Israel, and this chapter is filled with lament for Israel's stubbornness and sin and the consequences that followed. Israel was a rebellious people. They refused to listen to God's word spoken through the prophets, and they were eventually forced out of their land. They were stubborn, like their forefathers, rebelling against God and turning to idols. God sought to spare them long enough, but eventually handed them over to the Assyrian king. Even still, the Israelites wanted to serve other gods. They did not learn from their consequences. Though they feared God, they did not worship him with their lives. The new king of Judah, Hezekiah, was a righteous king and followed the Lord in ways that no other king before or after him had. He truly trusted the Lord and sought to please him in his reign. The Lord was faithful to Hezekiah. During the time that Samaria was handed over to the Assyrians, a new king took the throne. His name was Sennacherib, and he wanted to go to war with Judah, but Hezekiah sought to pay off the king with gold and silver. That was not enough for King Sennacherib. He wanted King Hezekiah and his people to bow down to him too. The Assyrians tried to threaten and scare the people of Judah first, but King Hezekiah had given orders: listen, but do not respond. God's judgment is just beginning for the people of Israel in these chapters, but it's also just the beginning of his mercy. The destruction and exile of the northern kingdom is actually only a brief description in chapter 17. The author does not linger there long, but simply explains the reason for God's judgment. We may be tempted to think that God failed to protect Israel, but God knew this very thing would happen, and in fact predicted that his people would cry out, "Where is our God?" Israel's destruction came as a result of Israel's sin and their broken covenant with God, simply put. But the good news for Israel is that God's judgment is not the final word for them. God promised judgment, but also restoration. God tore down in order to rebuild. This work continues today for God's people. We are brought face to face with the reality of our sin, except instead of us bearing the judgment for it, Jesus Christ bears our judgment on the cross. Through his sacrifice, God's people are restored to new life in him, rebuilt into his image every single day. Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to follow along on our Instagram pages at Daily Grace Podcast and at The Daily Grace Co. And check out our website, www.thedailygraceco.com, for all kinds of resources to help you to dive deeper into God's Word. On the website, you can find our Story of Redemption study to accompany this podcast, as well as Story of Redemption journals that have dedicated journaling space for every single chapter of the Bible. You can always find resources to accompany the podcast at dailygracepodcast.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to take a moment to leave us a rating or review on iTunes just to help other people find out about our show. Thank you so much, and we look forward to chatting again with you tomorrow.